Hello and welcome. My name is Dan Meyer. I'm the editor-in-chief of RCR Wireless News. Today I'm being joined by Chris Pearson with 4G Americas. Chris, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate it too.
Great. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about the hot topic of LTE, LTE-Advanced, a little 5G perhaps, maybe some spectrum issues, but all concerning kind of the Western Hemisphere, which is a main focus for 4G Americas. Perhaps we'll start out with maybe, Chris, if you want to give a quick, 1 minute at the most background on 4G Americas in case there is someone out there who doesn't know who 4G Americas is.
Sure. So 4G Americas is a wireless industry association dedicated to the 3GPP family of technologies focused on North, Central, and South America. We highlight three areas, which would be technical facilitation and coordination, regulatory policy work throughout the Americas region, and finally we do a lot of industry outreach with industry analysts and industry media about the technology paths and evolution of the 3GPP family of technologies.
Got it. And obviously on the 4G Americas site you guys have a lot of background information, a lot of white papers. I definitely recommend people check that out because, like I said, I know as a reporter I check out all the time. I use a lot of information from 4G Americas, and also Chris is at most of the trade shows, so if you happen to get one of the big trade shows, you can always track Chris down there too, because he's always running around there at those shows.
Yeah, our website, is actually quite a reference, whether for actually governments throughout the Americas as well as industry analysts and media. So it is actually in three languages: English, Portuguese, and Spanish. So hopefully your readers will find it valuable.
Yes, like I said, it's a definitely good resource. But yeah, so I guess for today's conversation, a couple of key points I want to touch on. I guess perhaps get from 4G Americas maybe an update on LTE deployments and subscriber growth in the Western Hemisphere. I guess maybe from your point of view, I guess how is LTE rolling out across the Americas from 4G Americas' point of view?
Yeah, so LTE is actually making unbelievably great progress throughout the world and the Americas. So maybe I'll start out with the world. Globally, LTE is deployed in 284 LTE commercial networks in 102 countries. And 4G Americas forecast that by the end of this year we'll reach 350 commercial networks of LTE around the world. So tremendous progress if you think about any mobile broadband technology in the world and how fast it's been deployed in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to focus on the Americas region, in North America, we have 47 commercial networks, and we are a leader in North America. We have almost half of the LTE connections globally. In fact, right now we're at in North America 115 million LTE connections. So again, about half. In Latin America, we have 38 networks, commercial networks, in 18 countries. And it's really in the beginning process of kind of exploding the number of LTE connections. Right now, as of the first quarter, we're at 2.4 million LTE commercial connections. But by year end, we expect 6.4 million. And then finally, by year end 2018, we work with Informa, and they predict with us that we'll reach 82 million LTE subscribers in Latin America by year end 2018. So tremendous progress in the region, tremendous progress globally, and the momentum just continues.
Yeah, well, it does seem like in Latin America, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of strong growth there, and it almost seems like that part of the world, their 3G lifespan for 3G networks has been fairly short. I mean, a lot of those countries seem to be going almost from 2G right to 4G. I mean, they're not really. I mean, they are doing some 3G deployments, but at least in North America and the rest of the world, there was a good 10 or 15-year lifespan for a lot of 3G networks, and they're still being supported now. But obviously for voice and stuff. But it seems like Latin America, especially, they're really making that a pretty big jump in a lot of places from 2G to straight to LTE in a lot of markets. Yeah,
well, it's actually interesting. I mean, I think that they actually are going to have a long lifespan of HSPA.
Okay.
There's been a tremendous number of HSPA plus upgrades throughout Latin America. So HSPA plus from mobile broadband technology is pretty much ubiquitous throughout Latin America. So I think the lifespan will actually be quite long.
Okay.
What you're seeing, though, is in the major cities, LTE deployed. And so that's why you have the 38 commercial networks in 18 countries. And if you look at, the region has over 700 million connections, and right now LTE is at 2.4 million. There's a huge runway for growth for LTE, and HSPA and HSPA Plus are going to continue to be part of the mobile broadband story in Latin America for quite some time.
Got it. Well, again, maybe I'm wrong in that situation, and so yeah, I get some information on. Obviously, again, you guys are.
I don't want to disagree with you, but I kind of have to sometimes.
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate that too. That sounds good. Well, I guess maybe focused on maybe more North America too, and obviously, a key for LTE rollouts has been the spectrum support. Countries have to have spectrum, carriers need to have spectrum to support these deployments. Here in the U.S., there's been some spectrum auctions. There's one recently, which is not a lot of spectrum, but there's some bigger ones scheduled. Obviously, the older 700 megahertz auction was a big driver for a lot of LTE deployments. Even the old AWS auction for T-Mobile, for instance, has been big for them for rolling LTE. But it does seem like here in North America, we've got some big auctions coming up. Canada just had their 700 megahertz auction. We're going to have a 2.5 one soon. Maybe talk a bit about the importance of spectrum for these deployments and how 4G Americas views government support in rolling out enough spectrum for carriers to be able to roll out these services.
Sure. There's no doubt that if you kind of look back on, historically, and I say historically, 5 to 10 years.
That's historically for us, yes.
Yeah, wireless years.
Yeah.
The U.S. government's decision to roll out AWS spectrum and even 700 spectrum really propelled LTE to the forefront in North America and really helped North America become a leader or the leader in LTE. So spectrum is the critical ingredient to when operators start to kind of decide about making new investments in technology or moving from 3G to 4G, et cetera, et cetera. So it was critical. It was critical in the United States. It was critical in Canada. And if you even go down to Latin America, you'll see that spectrum is the key ingredient when operators or new spectrum decide to go to the LTE platform.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did recently was last year we did a study, a white paper, it's on our website, about how much spectrum in Latin America is out there compared to the ITU requirements. And we really found that it's actually quite a low percentage as far as meeting the requirements of spectrum in Latin America. And we really need to get more spectrum out throughout North, Central, and South America to really continue to propel the industry, because more people are using smartphones and tablets, and that just takes up more spectrum.
Yeah, I know a lot of carriers, it seems like, at least in the U.S. and some maybe in Canada too, in Latin America too, that they're starting to look at perhaps even refarming some of their legacy spectrum, whether it's supported 2G and 3G for LTE. I guess how important is having somewhat of a unified spectrum, though? It does seem like, at least in the Western Hemisphere, that it is being, LTE deployments are kind of, surrounding the 700 megahertz, maybe AWS, and at some point 2.5. How important is it that spectrum unification be an important part of this? That carriers, kind of try to keep it somewhat uniform across the region.
Yeah, I like your term, somewhat uniform, because that is actually, obviously, we would all like to have one band or two bands that throughout the world would provide this, the spectrum band for LTE or so forth. But actually having even a few or a handful of harmonized bands in the Americas really helps. And some of the bands that you've seen for LTE, for instance, the 700 band for Canada and the United States helped a great deal. Now we understand Latin America will kind of go to a 700 plan that's Asia Pacific orientated, but still, at least they're, it's getting closer. And then finally, the AWS band has been huge for LTE in North America, and it's becoming a huge band in Latin America as well, because most of the governments have adopted an AWS plan that is the same as the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. So what happens is you get LTE being deployed in these bands that are harmonized, and it's good for economies of scale and scope and roaming and so forth. So it's something that 4G Americas has worked many, many years on, and it's incredibly important to us as well, because it's incredibly important to the wireless industry.
Sure. Well, not to kind of push aside LTE, but it does seem like LTE-Advanced has become like the new buzzword. Obviously, in some parts of the world, LTE is starting to become starting to roll out. It's kind of the next evolution of LTE. What's the general view from 4G Americas on LTE-Advanced, and I guess when will we see? Do you think LTE-Advanced start to roll out across the Western Hemisphere?
Yeah, so LTE-Advanced is really the next evolutionary step for LTE, and operators I think, are very committed to LTE-Advanced. They want to improve the network capacity of their networks through things like carrier aggregation. They also want to use a lot of the tools that are within the LTE-Advanced standard. Right now, worldwide, there's 7 commercial networks in 5 countries.
Yep.
And when we say LTE-Advanced is roll out, mostly it means that some of the features of LTE-Advanced are rolled out. Not the entire menu, as you might say, but just a few of the features like carrier aggregation and so forth. But we expect at 4G Americas that throughout the world, and including the Americas, 2014, you'll see many more announcements. We haven't forecast the exact number, but we expect it to be very substantial to see a lot of LTE-Advanced announcements throughout the region. Again, 7 networks in 5 countries is a great start, and I think most of those have deployed what's called carrier aggregation.
Yeah, like you said, they're doing parts of it, like you said. I mean, there are lots of different specifications for LTE-Advanced that carriers can roll out, and you're right. It seems like right now carrier aggregation is the main part of it. I know there's MIMO, there's some small cell integration as well coming out as well for it, but yeah, that's
even some SON features that are, I think, most of the operators are very interested in because it also helps their small cell deployments as well.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, once LTE-Advanced rolls out, then we can really officially claim that 4G is out there, because I have a bit of a stickler for the whole 4G. What is 4G, not 4G? But I'll leave that for now for you, for some of the extra arguments.
Hey, well, that could take a whole 60-minute segment here or something.
Yeah, I'll leave that alone for now. Well, I mean, another part of LTE that's getting a lot of attention too is the voice aspect of it. And obviously, VoLTE will be an important part of LTE, and I know carriers who are looking to roll out LTE are in North America at least, they're talking about VoLTE, plans to roll out VoLTE, which will allow them at some point as well to kind of decommission or take down their legacy networks once they can start supporting voice coverage on their LTE services. How's the VoLTE deployments rolling along? What's your view on the progress of VoLTE?
Again, I think everyone is committed to VoLTE, but I think what they're also committed to is excellent voice service. And so, like with any new technology, especially when you're doing voice over LTE, that it takes some time to basically iron out some of the wrinkles. So, if you think of what a wireless carrier deals with when they are dealing with someone that's on the, we take it for granted when they're making a conversation, but there's a lot of items that have to go perfectly correct for them to place a phone call, and that's using circuit switch. So when you start to move to a packet-based network where you have to deal with things like latency and various other items, then it becomes a little more tricky. And so I think most of the carriers, even though some people have been disappointed in the progress of when VoLTE was possibly going to come out and when it's come out, I think most people should be understand that their carriers are trying to protect them and make sure that when they use VoLTE voice service that it works better than what they've had before with circuit switch. So we think 2014 will be a big year for VoLTE. That you've seen rumors of announcements out there for quite some time, but we think 2014 will be a year where you'll see quite a few more. And the reasons are twofold. One is I think there is a lot that you can do with VoLTE as far as quality of service and high quality voice, but also, as you mentioned, it allows them to use their network their spectrum better. So it is a very efficient way to provide voice and allows them to not invest in their legacy, but invest into the future. Yeah.
And like you said too, it is a very complicated process. I mean, I know I've written a lot of stories on perhaps the disappointment angle of VoLTE rolling out, but again, I hope I've tried to explain also. I mean, it's doing voice is still people maybe downplay the importance of voice in this data world that we're in, but people expect voice to work a certain way, and if we've had 100 years of telecom service to expect how voice works, and when it doesn't work that way, people are going to get disappointed. And it's tricky to make sure you got the right coverage, that there's potential circuit switch fallback. I mean, there's things you have to work on that. It's a pretty complicated process. So obviously it's disappointing it's not out yet, but you're right. It has to be something that's done correctly, and you can't just get it sort of right. It's got to be 100% right. There's no leeway there for consumers.
Yeah, even though we live in a world of mobile data, voice is still a table stake, and it almost can't be said any better than that. It's just we have to have great voice service, and because people take it for granted, and so therefore I think operators should be commended for making sure that they're getting it right.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Well, maybe one final topic we can touch on again, not to push aside LTE or LTE Advanced, but let's look even farther forward to
Okay.
this mythical 5G, which is the next G that I'm not quite ready for yet, but it's getting a lot of hype and publicity. I know there's been some recent conferences on 5G and what's to be expected from 5G. Obviously, 4G Americas. I know you guys were at one point called 3G Americas. It's 4G Americas. And
Yep.
I'm guessing at some point we'll see another name change. But what's 4G America's view at this point on what 5G is and what can we expect from 5G?
Well, 4G Americas has been out there for quite some time talking about, three areas that we need to work on. One is technology innovation, one is more spectrum, and one is regulatory innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So this falls right into the story of ours, which is technology evolution. And we don't know exactly what 5G is or will be at this time, but I think it's good for organizations to be looking to the future, because if you don't know where you're going, it's going to be difficult to plan. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I like seeing is when you hear about a company or a research house or a university or anybody starting to talk about 5G, at least there's not this overhype of 5G is coming in 2 years and it's going to make your bed for you and cook your breakfast. I like the fact that it is contained to the fact that most people are saying that we are looking to plan for the future in wireless. We are looking at the technology evolution or technology revolution. We're not sure, and that it's the time frame is pretty far out there when you think about wireless technology. So it's most people are talking 2020 or beyond, and I like hearing that, because I think in our industry at sometimes we have a tendency to overhype some things, and sometimes people expect them to be delivered in a year or two, and yet that's not what we're doing here. So I think 5G, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to look at what are the real requirements that we're trying to go about. Is there a new air interface that is going to help us? Is there something else within the networks that we can do to meet those mobile requirements? Is it going to be a technology evolution? Is it going to be technology revolution? And so I think it's okay for and a good thing for us to look to the future, as long as we don't start throwing out the term as if it's coming next week.
Well, I like the way you put that. There is a bit of overhype cycle, and you're right. So far, it's been somewhat muted for 5G, but I'm afraid that probably won't last for very long. But hopefully it does. Hopefully, hopefully we don't get too ahead of ourselves with this. But those are good points. And obviously, and again, 5G, like you said, it is important to have that roadmap so people have something to focus on and to kind of reach for. So it's obviously a good thing to do. But hopefully we don't get.
There's no doubt a lot of work to be done,
yeah.
And hopefully, I think there's been some very prominent CEOs within the industry and within our company, member companies, that if you look closely to how they're making their statements, they're using finesse words that help them to say, because I think they realize that nobody knows exactly what 5G will be. There's no ITU requirement right now for what would be, and they typically don't use terms like 5G. They've used IMT and IMT-Advanced, so we don't even know what the exact term that they will use and what requirements that they might put forth, and we don't know exactly what requirements we're trying to meet yet, and so what technologies that we have to move back or forward to meet those. So there's a lot of work to be done. We're really at the tip of the iceberg. Before and I think we'll know more within the next few years.
Yeah, and again, even if once the full LTE-Advanced implementation is out there, I mean, the potential for that itself seems almost mind-boggling. I mean, the speeds that are talked about and the capabilities of LTE-Advanced once it's fully rolled out seem pretty. That seemed pretty far-reaching. So even getting to that point, it seems like that might be a better way to focus maybe at this point, as opposed to jumping the next hurdle at this point, because LTE-Advanced has a lot baked into it, it seems.
I totally agree. I think that sometimes people start talking about 5G and they forget about, okay, we have 7 commercial LTE-Advanced networks, and most of those are only deploying 1 or 2 features of LTE-Advanced. If you look at that entire LTE-Advanced standard, There is so much that you can do for your network. Of course, you'd have to have unlimited funds and unlimited engineering resources, but there is so much what would be considered runway left in LTE and LTE Advanced that hopefully people don't forget about that, and because I know that operators and their vendor partners are investing heavily in LTE Advanced, and I think it's going to show a lot to the customers when they use mobile broadband anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, great. Well, hey, Chris, we definitely appreciate the time. Thanks for the insight. And like I mentioned too, if people are looking for more information on 4G, LTE, LTE Advanced in general, I definitely recommend the 4gamericas.org site. There is a lot of good information on there, a lot of white papers, very in-depth white papers, hundreds of pages in white papers, thousands of pages. There's a lot there, so I definitely recommend that people want to check that out. Check out the site there. But again, Chris, thanks so much for the time today. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it as well.
All right.